In Jesus' name, amen. Please be seated. A podium makes me feel like I'm doing Sabbath school, but nonetheless, I'll walk around and we'll talk. So our presentation this evening is titled, that works perfect, is titled, Increase, Come on in, all the way to the front. That's what latecomers get, all the way to the front. Increase your lifetime wealth with tax planning. Do we believe that tax planning is important? Why is tax planning important? Don't be shy. We all know each other. Why do you think tax planning is important? Absolutely. You could lose money that you could have saved if you knew what you needed to know to make the right decision, right? So it's important to plan, right? Because when you don't plan, you fail. You plan to fail, right? You have not taken the initiative to find out what is the right way to go about doing it. And so the information that you may have at the time may not be adequate. It may not be sufficient. It may be incorrect. And for a number of reasons may lead you to make a wrong decision. And especially when it comes to our retirement assets, which we've accumulated over a period of time, what to do with that. And so our presentation, again, hopefully we'll get that going. It's supposed to be launching at 8:30, which is in 15 minutes. Hopefully we'll be able to gather some information from that. But if not, there's another presentation that we'll be looking at. We're good? I love that thumbs up. So I'll take a moment just to introduce myself, although you know me, but sometimes we need to, extend that courtesy for others who don't, and share a little bit more about there we go. So I am a financial advisor with Thrivent. I've been in the industry for over a decade with a bachelor's in banking and finance and a master's in business. And I work throughout multiple states. I manage about $50 million of assets. The different states I work in are listed there, but my main office is in Lake Worth. And so when we talk about advice, we're talking about providing information and direction, providing guidance. That's the objective, is to equip you with resources and information to make an educated decision. We're going backward. There we go. So Thrivent that I work with is a Christian financial service organization. It's been around for over 100 years, and we focus on advice, investments, insurance, banking, and generosity programs. I already know a lot of you in here are Thrivent members, and so you can name off the bat one or two generosity programs. The main one is a Thrivent Action Team, where every year a member gets $500 to do something good in your church, in your community. And so Pathfinders has benefited, community services, lunch resources are being brought into the church just by virtue of your financial relationship with the company. And so it goes hand in hand, faith and finances for good. I think we're going the other direction, okay. So that's a little bit more about Thrivent in terms of a company. It has over $189 billion in assets under management, A++ rating for its products and services, and we have about 2.3 million members or clients all across the United States. My favorite accolade, one of the most ethical companies to do business with, and we've got that award from 12 all the way up until last year. We're expecting to get that again this year. I gotta keep my finger on this clicker. And just a little bit more about our generosity programs and how those have accumulated over the last year. In 2022, we did over 238 million raised and donated through Thrivent clients and members. And so we're actually structured as a not-for-profit organization. Everything above our cost basis goes back into our clients' hands for them to give out how they see fit. And so that may come to this church, it may go to other causes and different organizations that you're affiliated with. All right, and so that's a little bit about Thrivent. This was a backup presentation. I actually want to take some time and just highlight a few things out of it because it ties into the handouts that you have. One of the pieces that you have will say your tax efficiency. So take a quick look at it if you could pull it out. We have some time. So look for the tax efficiency checklist. Wave it at me if you found it. All right, looks like a carnival in here. And so tax efficiency is a way of categorizing your assets so you know how they are going to be treated for taxes. All right, going back to that same initial question, why do we plan? The first thing we want to do is figure out what do we have in our arsenal? What type of accounts do we have? We have savings accounts, checking accounts, and some savings accounts are earning something these days. Money market accounts are earning dollars because of where inflation is and where underlying interest rates are. So you might be seeing some earnings in your savings. Not much, but still something that you're seeing. And so you get a 1099 INT for interest, or if it's a dividend, you get a 1099 div that tax year for whatever you earn in a savings account. So that's your first column, right? That's your tax now. Whatever you earn, on that you pay taxes to Uncle Sam that year, all right? And you can look through the list to see how that's associated with you. You can cover your sheet if you don't feel comfortable sharing with others, but it's helpful for you to see where your assets are lining up. In the middle column, that's your tax later bucket. And statistically speaking, most people have all of their assets, or most of their assets rather, in that middle column. We're talking about traditional IRAs, 401ks, any type of qualified account, 403bs, simple SEP, any type of employer-based account, because that's where we're committing most of our savings specifically for retirement. And so the IRS allows us to be able to put some of that money aside and not pay taxes on it the year that you earn it. And so if you made $100,000 that year, and you made a contribution of $20,500, which is the cap you can put in your 401k, at least for last year, if you're under 50, and then the IRS will only look at you of making $79,500, because $20,500 is seen as deductible, okay? And so we get to put it in a bucket that is for later. So it's tax later. That's what it says, right? A tax later column. And so because that bucket is designed for later access, it's tax deferred, and so it's growing later, okay? And so if that $20,500 turns into $50,000, guess how much of it is still taxable? All of it. All of it. And so you can begin, your wheels are turning, to see that there's a problem that could be created there, where something that I took $20,500 of and put there is now $50,000, all of it that becomes taxable. And so a lot of folks in their later years, they're thinking, well, I won't be working, maybe I'll be in a lower tax bracket at that time, maybe I'll be able to pay less taxes. But guess what? We don't determine tax brackets. Who does? Uncle Sam, all of the names, Congress, all of those, not us, right? And so the other sheet you have talks about the potential for higher tax brackets. Do you see that one? Flip through the sheet. Okay? Potential for higher tax brackets. And so that sheet talks about the importance of seeing where taxes could be later on. Do we think taxes are going up or down in the future? Not sure? Up? Always up. And so it's likely that we'll see higher taxes. For one, the Tax Cut and Job Act that was recently passed, and I say recent, 2019, by our former president, actually reduced tax brackets. That is set to sunset 2025. And so without any act of Congress, we're automatically going to be going back into a higher tax bracket, right? And so if they do nothing, automatically we're going to be at 2025 seeing higher tax brackets. And so if someone is retiring at that point, right, there is a higher amount that you're going to be giving to Uncle Sam, right? So that's one of the concerns. The other concerns is that as those funds accumulate over time, typically your Social Security is affected by the amount of income that you have. And so if you're distributing funds out of those types of accounts, your Social Security could be taxed more. Did you know you pay taxes on Social Security? You do. You absolutely do. And so if your income is below $24,000, you don't. But if you're above $24,000 for what is called your provisional income, then you start paying taxes. Up to 50% of your Social Security benefit is taxable once you're over $24,000. And if you're over $32,000, I'm talking single, over $32,000 for your income, 85% of your Social Security benefits become taxable. Yes. For your income, 85% of your Social Security benefits become taxable. I know my voice sounds good, but I don't need an echo. So just making sure that we can rectify that. Thank you. He's golden back there. Thank you, Brother Stewart. And so when we look at planning for these things, here is the big bucket of IRAs, 401ks, traditional IRAs, and I'm prepping us for a session that's going to start in 5 minutes. But this is some of the content we have to think about, because where we pull money from affects how much income we have and also affects how much we pay for Social Security. Our Medicare premiums, and Medicare is something you take at 65. That's the health insurance provided by the federal government at 65. And so your premiums are affected by the amount of income that you have as well. And so the more money you have coming from taxable accounts, from Social Security, from pension, to pay higher for your Medicare. And it's a higher threshold, but for a married couple, you can easily get there. Okay? So not to alarm you, but to educate you that there are a lot of information that we need to be paying attention to, not just for saving, and it's good that we're saving, but where we're accumulating and how they're treated, and the opportunities for taking distributions out of those types of accounts when we can. Because if you have a gap year sometimes when you're not working, maybe that's the time to take a distribution for those accounts if you can. There are certain penalties for access. So you want to make sure that you have the ability or you meet the criteria for being able to convert those assets to what are called Roth accounts or doing a Roth conversion. Or if you're still in your accumulation years, we have young folk here that are still saving to start contributing to what are called Roth IRAs or Roth 401ks, right? And so those types of accounts, you don't get a tax deduction for it in the year that you earn the income, but they grow tax-free. Uncle Sam can never come back and say, give me some, all right? Those are your dollars. And so if that $20,500 was put into a Roth and grew to $50,000, that is entirely yours. Sure, you wouldn't have got a tax deduction that year. You'd have still been considered earning $100,000, but you would have been taxed on just the seed, not on the whole harvest. Right? And so it's important, again, to just think about where we're putting things. Everything that's in that tax never column, Roth IRAs, Roth 401ks, even cash value that you have in your life insurance are things that you can access tax-free, that grows tax-deferred. And, you know, life insurance, a lot of you will have whole life, universal. The cash that's in there, you can access it and then leave a death benefit also tax-free for your beneficiaries. So that's a really good tax loophole that a lot of folks don't pay attention to. Cash value that's in your life insurance as well. Okay? So we're going to jump right in. I think our time is, how close are we? 5 minutes? Okay, so what I'd like to do then is pull out another piece. I think everyone got an extra piece. It wasn't on the table, but I handed, okay, so folks may not have it. Raise your hand if you don't have this one. Okay. And so this is 2023 tax brackets, 2023 tax guide. So this is a little sheet that's going to allow you to do some amount of tax planning. You guys have one. Raise your hand. Yes? Okay. So take one and pass behind you. And so as you are looking at your income for this year, you can start doing some planning with this guide, with the sheet. And so let's talk about the tax guide for the remaining 5 minutes we have. So for a married couple, which I see married couple here, for someone who is a married couple, if you together are making $100,000, you are in the 22% tax bracket, which would mean that you are somewhere between 89, that middle column, you see 89,450 up to 190,000. That's the 22% tax bracket, right? And so think about, the cents on the dollar. Do you think you will be in a 22% tax bracket in retirement as well as a married couple, right? Easily you could be. If you're taking distribution out of your 401k, if you both are taking Social Security, if you perhaps have a pension that's coming, then you could easily, in retirement, end up in a 22% tax bracket. So we weigh it. Do we pay taxes on it now, or do we pay taxes on it later, with later having the caveat of potentially higher brackets or deeper brackets for the amount of money that you make? So we'll talk a little bit more. I don't want to keep us up. I think it's right at 8:30. So Debbie Taylor is going to go through a whirlwind of information. Make notes. Some of it is just going to be terminologies that you perhaps are unfamiliar with. I want you to get ready to ask questions at the end. I'm ready to receive questions. So just make sure that you're paying attention, you're listening, and then we're going to be coming back after the presentation for question and answers, and then we will have some food, and that's it, okay? So cue the live webinar. What's the countdown? 2 minutes. Okay, that's fine. In the interim, do you have any questions so far based on what we've covered? Anything that has stood out for you so far? Anything you were thinking about, either in the news or unrelated, financial related, that you have a question about? Yes, ma'am. How do you go from the IRA to a Roth IRA? Very good question. So each year, you can make a contribution for 2023 tax year. You can make a contribution of $6,500 into an IRA, and that's a traditional IRA or a Roth IRA. If you've made a contribution to a traditional IRA and you want to move to a Roth IRA, typically you can do that without penalty if you're over 59 and a half. You would still pay taxes on the amount moving from traditional IRA to the Roth IRA, but the taxable amount would be there. And so if I had $6,500, I decided to move into a Roth IRA, I would say to Uncle Sam, in that tax year, I made $6,500. That's how they would analyze it, because we're looking at income tax bracket. It's not a flat tax bracket, it's an accumulated amount. And so if you made $50,000, they would consider you making $56,500 for that year. That's how brackets are determined. That's how you would be taxed. And so for someone who didn't have an income that year, they have what is called a standard deduction of about $12,000. And the updated standard deduction is somewhere on here. Actually, $13,850. Go to your standard deduction section. And so pretty much all of that amount would be absorbed into their standard bracket. And this is why it's so important to be able to do some tax planning, because years that you're not working, years that you need to be able to take some conversions, that's when you want to do it. That's when you want to go from point A to point B in an opportune tax bracket. Because at that point, Uncle Sam is not taxing you, right? You had a deduction that was covering the amount that you technically earned or moved into a taxable state, okay? So hope that was clear enough. Yes? Additional questions? What else are we thinking? So we can contribute to an IRA. We can also transfer to an IRA, okay? So our contribution is how much we're putting in, right? Which is $6,500 if you're under 50. You have $1,000 catch up if you're over 50, right? And so you can make contributions into your IRA. Now, if your employer doesn't have a plan, that's perfectly what an IRA is for. You can set up your own retirement plan, which is an IRA, and you could do it either as a Roth or a traditional IRA. All right. We're going to switch to Debbie Taylor, and then we're going to come back for question and answers.
There are a million reasons to have a financial plan, and money is only one of them. Done right, your plan should lighten your step so that you can lift up others. At Thrivent, we've helped clients with advice, investments, insurance, banking, and generosity for over 100 years. Let Thrivent help you find your financial clarity so you can live a life that's full as well as fulfilling. See how your money can do more.
Well, hello all. Welcome to our virtual event on increasing your lifetime wealth with tax planning, featuring Debbie Taylor. We are happy that you could join us tonight. Tonight, my prayer is that you are both informed and inspired by the content and resources provided. I'm Dan Macon, and I manage the engagement team for Thrivent out of Cleveland, Ohio. So welcome, welcome, welcome. We have people joining from all over tonight. We're excited. A lot of people coming from all the way across on the other side of the country. So we're glad to have you with us tonight. You know, during this time of ongoing change and uncertainty, having financial clarity is more important than ever. And as always, but especially now, we at Thrivent are committed to providing you with the financial education you need to achieve that clarity. In fact, you know what? That is our goal for this webinar, is that you leave here feeling confident that you have the right strategy in place. Or if you don't, that we provided you with the resources you need to start developing that strategy. We have some tremendous resources for you all tonight. Few items to be mindful of to make this virtual event an enjoyable experience. You will have the opportunity to provide feedback and get your questions answered at the end of the presentation. So please hang on till the end. Your feedback is important so that we can ensure we are delivering programs and topics that interest you. Also, we have some tremendous resources. Once again, I don't want you to miss all that we have in store for you towards the end. In a moment, I will bring in Debbie Taylor, but first, if you are new to Thrivent, I want to give you a really brief high-level overview of who we are. At Thrivent, we believe money is a tool, not a goal, driven by a higher purpose at our core. And we are committed to providing people with financial advice, insurance, investments, banking, and generosity programs. We want to help you make the most of all God has given to you. That is our mission here at Thrivent, and that's why we're here tonight. Another thing I want to say is, you know what? Life is better when it's filled with purpose, right? And I've got some good news for all of you that are with us. Thrivent is growing. We are growing and hiring right now. So think about it this way. Are you or someone you know, it could be a friend, it could be a family member, it could be somebody you just know in the community, looking for a new, fulfilling career? We're continuing to grow and hiring new financial professionals with a virtual interview and training options. So yeah, just like we're on Zoom right now, we could do interview sessions and we could also do training for these positions. If you're a person driven by helping others, if you're a self-motivated person, if you say, hey, I'm a natural coach and passionate about living a life of generosity by serving others, not just selling products, we want to talk to you. We want to have a conversation with you and tell you about this fabulous career and working here at Thrivent. And we could do that over video chat or by phone. On the brief poll, when you leave us today, you can identify you would like more information regarding a career here at Thrivent. I'm celebrating coming up here 6 years at this amazing organization. I was introduced to it through my church, and it's been a blessing ever since. And it can be a blessing to you or someone you know. So I just wanted to put the good news out there. All right, let's go ahead and get started. I want to bring in Debbie Taylor. Let me introduce her. Debbie Taylor is the founder and lead wealth advisor of Taylor Financial Group, a full-service, woman-owned financial advising and wealth management firm located in Franklin Lakes, New Jersey. Debbie's education and career have spanned many fields, which is why she is able to provide her clients with a multidisciplinary approach to help them pursue their goals and live life to the fullest. Debbie's passion is in educating and empowering clients and their families to take control of their future, which is why she focuses on advice in all areas, including investment management, insurance solutions, tax planning, retirement planning, and also estate planning. We are blessed to have her with us tonight and leading us on this very important topic. So I want to bring in Debbie Taylor. Get your paper and pads and notes ready to write down some notes because she has some really good stuff for us. Debbie, good to have you with us tonight.
Well, hello, Dan. Can you see my screen?
I sure can. It looks good.
Great. Well, thank you for those kind words and that warm welcome. And I'm thrilled to be here tonight with my friends from Thrivent. And so we've got a lot of ground to cover. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I understand that some folks are in viewing parties with their advisors. And of course, some folks are probably watching us from the comfort of their living room. And so welcome. And as Dan says, we are going to cover some nice ground tonight, so have your pens and pencils handy, your pad, maybe your little laptop, your iPad, whatever it is, the thing that you need to take some good notes. So before we hop in, I want to mention the idea here behind tax planning. And the idea then is this is so important for all of us in building wealth, but not just to build wealth for that sake, but building wealth so that we can help our families, help our community, help our place of worship, right? Help those around us. And so there's so much impact that we can have by doing really smart tax planning. And sometimes they're little wins, and sometimes they're big wins. But I will tell you, running these numbers day in and day out, because this is pretty much all I do, even if you live a lifetime of these small wins, making these good decisions, but small decisions every single year, if you do that over decades, I can tell you it can have a profound impact for your wealth, for your family, for the folks that you care about. And so with that backdrop then, let's hop in. So what are we going to talk about? These are the 4 things we're going to talk about, and then we're going to have a review. Why tax planning is a must-do, where do we begin, 9 ways to diffuse the pre-retiree tax bomb, and 5 tax gotchas. And so, to be clear for the folks out there, I believe that there is something for everybody in this presentation. If you are a beginner, hang tough with us. I think you're going to walk away with a deeper understanding and appreciation and a few good notes. If you are an advanced player and you're like, yeah, I'm pretty good with all this stuff, my hope is that you're also going to walk away with some insights or some wisdom or a different way of looking at things. So I designed this presentation so that everybody can walk away with something. And by the way, same thing based on your age, same thing based on your wealth, your status, whether you're at the beginning of your journey or whether you are well on your journey, no matter where you are, my hope is that 1 hour from now, 15 minutes from now, you're going to walk away and you're going to consider this time well spent. So the first thing is why tax planning is a must-do. So where do you think tax rates are going? I love to include this chart because to me a picture is worth 1,000 words, and this really says it all. Tax rates are among the lowest they've ever been since the inception of the tax code in 1913. When we look at a chart like this, it seems fairly obvious if we say, hey, where do I think tax rates are going? A good answer may be up, right? Taxes may be going up. And it's not just because tax rates are at a historic low. It's also because the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, which was passed in 2017, is going to sunset in the end of 2025. And I remember when the TCJA was passed, it felt like 2025 was like a decade away. And we didn't really need to worry about that. Well, time flies when you're having fun, and now we have the expiration of the TCJA literally 2.5 years from now. It is right around the corner. So we need to be thinking very practically that some of the benefits from that TCJA. And remember, the benefits were income tax cuts for many, but also estate tax benefits that were significant, and we're going to cover that. So we're talking about two different types of taxes, income taxes and estate taxes. But the TCJA was very generous on both counts. And in 2.5 years, if Congress does nothing, the TCJA expires and tax rates will go up, and estate taxes will also go up for many. Do I think that the TCJA is just going to expire and we're going to revert back to those 2017 tax rates? No, I don't think that it's just going to expire. It's too soon to say exactly what's going to happen, because we need to know who's going to be in the White House, and we need to know which parties are controlling the legislature. So you're not seeing a lot of talk yet about sunset and what that's going to look like. It's almost premature because we don't know who's in control of Washington, so we can't really start betting for or against anything. But what's safe to say is there's going to be some horse trading. There's going to be some negotiation. And I think it's also safe to say that those higher income folks are probably going to lose. And so we want to be then extra sensitive to what I refer to as tax chaos. And whether tax chaos comes at the sunset of the TCJA in 2.5 years, or it comes even after that for different reasons, we've got to be aware that tax rates are at historical lows. We've also got to be aware that our debt is at $30 trillion, and we have a 128% debt to GDP ratio. We've got a deficit of $460 billion, and we have rising interest rates that makes it more expensive for us to service that ever-expanding debt. So there's a lot going on in Washington that we need to keep our eye on. A lot of reasons why they are going to need to increase taxes or somehow increase revenue to pay all these bills that are coming due. And what better way to do that than increase taxes on large IRAs, on large estates, on folks that have worked their entire lives to amass their wealth. So something that we've got to be very sensitive to. A goal without a plan is just a wish. So we may all be sitting here with an idea of, hey, I do want to increase my wealth. I do want to minimize my lifetime taxes. But as my children will tell me, Mom, hope is not a strategy, right? So we're going to spend the rest of our time then talking about practical things that we can do to make a difference. So the first thing then is, where do we begin? And how I begin every meeting with a client, with a prospect, whether I've known you for 30 years or whether you are new, the first thing is what's on your mind. Your financial advisor is there. They are a trusted team member, a trusted support to you, but they can't help you if they don't know what's on your mind or what keeps you up at night. And so the first thing is to really understand, what are you concerned about? What are your goals? What's important to you? And what keeps you up at night? And what the studies will show is the number one thing that concerns us generally is running out of our money, is outliving our money. And with inflation very high, that concern is that much more pronounced. In fact, the Wall Street Journal had an article just yesterday saying, hey, you're probably spending more than you thought, because that same trip to the grocery store today costs a lot more than that same trip from a year ago or 2 years ago. And so the first concern for most people is, I don't want to outlive my money. The second concern, the data shows us, is taxes. I don't want to pay too much in taxes. And these are the things we're going to talk about, and in a way they go hand in hand, because if we can minimize our tax bill, then we will increase our overall wealth, and that will then help our wealth to last longer. So when you think about it, they actually work very nicely together. When delving a little bit deeper, these are the three, they call them kinder questions. And these questions are designed to really probe. And so it's an opportunity for you to look, and they're tough questions. What would you do if you had all the time and money in the world? Wow, I never thought about that. How would you live if you knew you only had 5 to 10 years left? Wow, what would I do? And what would you most regret if you died tomorrow? These are some tough questions to ask, but they're good questions to ask because it allows you to reveal maybe some of the things that you weren't talking about or things that you sort of buried a little bit. And it's important in talking with your partner, your spouse, your family, and even your advisor, understanding these are our goals, these are our dreams, these are the things that are really important to me. And that means that these are the things that your advisor is going to help you with. Okay, so now let's hop into some real practical suggestions, 9 ways to diffuse the pre-retiree tax bomb. So I want to be clear. Like I said before, there's something for everybody in this presentation. Right now, we're going to focus on what I would tell you foundational principles. So if you're younger or earlier on your journey, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, then this is the foundation that you want to be creating for building, enduring wealth. If you're in your 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, maybe 90s, and you are sitting with us, then these are still the principles that we want to be following all the way through. But certainly, it's a lot easier to build enduring wealth when we start early and when we're making good decisions early on. So we could call this section sort of 9 ways to build a great foundation. And everybody then should be paying attention and either doing this or intending to do this. So the first goal is creating essentially tax diversification. And that is to say, there are 3 different accounts that are basically available to you. There's taxable accounts, tax-deferred accounts, and tax-free accounts. 3 types of tax treatment. And let's talk about these accounts and why they're important. So you have those taxable accounts. Those are just those regular joint tenant with right of survivorship or individual accounts that most of you have. Those accounts are nice because they're taxed at the capital gains tax rate, and generally speaking, that tax rate is lower than the ordinary income tax rate, generally speaking. So those are nice accounts to have. The second type of account are those tax-deferred accounts, that traditional IRA, that 401k, that 457B, 403B. I'm going to refer to them as traditional retirement accounts, IRA, 401k, because the tax treatment of those accounts is basically the same. The tax treatment is basically the same. And that is to say that the money goes into those accounts, pre-tax, and then it grows tax deferred. But at the back end, when you take it out, you get taxed at that ordinary income tax rate. And that's where it can be a little bit troubling, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. So that's the second type of account. The third type of account are my favorite. Those are the tax-free accounts. That's that Roth IRA, that's a 529 college savings plan, and that's also the health savings account, the HSA, the tax-free accounts. And that means basically that your money comes out tax-free at the back end. There are certain limitations and certain things that you have to qualify for with it. But basically, if you check the right boxes, the money comes out tax-free at the back end. Okay, those are 3 different types of accounts. And what you don't want is you don't want to head into retirement with primarily only one type of account. You want tax diversification. You want options. You want to put it together like a puzzle so that down the road you can say, okay, this year I'm going to take money out of this account, a little money out of that account. We want to be able to mix and match down the road. And I'm going to talk a little bit later on about what that looks like. But suffice to say, as we're building our wealth, we want to ideally have some form of diversification among these types of accounts. building on this idea of these three accounts, I want to focus on this Roth account. Roth accounts are like a Swiss Army knife. Now, I'm not particularly handy, but I do know that a Swiss Army knife can be used for a lot of things. Think of the Roth account in that way, your Swiss Army knife for financial strategies. What does a Roth account do? Well, let's think about it for a second. Roth accounts can have money at the end come out tax-free. Your distributions can be tax-free at the end. Roth accounts do not have RMDs, so that money can grow for decades. And when it comes out at the back end, we just said it comes out tax-free. So that is amazing that you essentially have tax-deferred growth that becomes a tax-free distribution at the back end. And we have no RMDs, so that money can continue to grow past age 73, and we don't have to have forced distributions from the account. What else is nice about Roth IRAs is if you leave a Roth IRA to, let's say, your children, they can also take the money out income tax-free. It's essentially like you are prepaying the tax on that money for your children. The other thing to remember is that when you're taking money out of that Roth IRA in retirement, because it's coming out tax-free, it's not increasing your AGI, and therefore it's not triggering some of the other taxes that get triggered by a large AGI. So there actually is a positive cascading effect, essentially, or at least you're avoiding the negative cascading effect because we're not increasing AGI. And therefore, other deductions will come more easily to us, and we might not have higher taxes in other areas. And so there's a lot of benefits to these Roth accounts. So how do we think about when to invest in a Roth, what's good timing, good age? And what I would tell you is that there's a lot of rules of thumb that have been developed over the years. And what I will also tell you is I think you should reject the rules of thumb because they can be misleading. And in its place, you should have a one-on-one conversation, analysis, case-by-case review as to whether the Roth IRA makes sense for your situation. And so for years they'd say, don't do a Roth IRA if you're not going to live for 10 years. Well, I don't agree with that. I have done Roth IRAs for widows in their 80s who were probably going to pass within the 10 years. But the Roth IRA conversion makes sense because she's in a lower tax bracket and she would be leaving it to her heirs who are in a higher tax bracket. They'll also say, if you're young, don't do a Roth conversion. Why not? You can do a Roth conversion and watch that money grow tax-free for decades. If you're in a very high tax bracket, don't do a Roth conversion. Why not? If you're in a very high tax bracket, guess what? Your tax rate might be going up even more in a couple of years if taxes increase or the TCJA sunsets or there's some horse trading on it and they decide to raise taxes on higher income people. So even if you're in the highest tax bracket now, you could be in an even higher tax bracket down the road. Maybe you're making more money, tax rates go up. So maybe it does make sense to do a Roth conversion, even if you are in a higher tax bracket. What about if you're in a low tax bracket? And some would say, gee, you don't need it because you're in a low tax bracket. But think about it the other way. If you could do a Roth conversion at 10 or 12%, that's sort of a bargain. Locking in that money so that down the road it can come out tax-free. And locking it in at a 10 or 12% tax rate now, that's pretty cool. And also taking then a step back for all of these situations, remember that many of you probably have accounts that have declined over the last year or 15 months. So if you have technology holdings that are down, or you have other holdings that are down, I mean, heck, even the bond funds were down 10 to 12% last year. If you have holdings that are down, those are perfect candidates often for a Roth conversion. So when you think about the fact that many of you have assets that have declined, and then you think, wow, I'm looking at this Roth conversion opportunity a little bit differently. When you look at both of these things together, the Roth conversion could make sense for a lot of you. So if I'm rejecting a lot of those rules of thumb, what am I putting in its place? I'm saying case-by-case analysis. Every situation is different. So let's sit and let's look at it thoughtfully. And what is the test then? And what I would tell you is there's a 3-part test. So I graduated from law school, and one of the things they teach you in law school is that you should have a test for everything, right? There should be a standard for everything. So I created my own standard for determining whether a Roth conversion makes sense. And here is the standard, is you look at your tax rate today, and you look at the ghosts of Christmas future, and there's 3 of them. Ghosts of Christmas future, like out of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, is how I look at it. So you look at your tax rate today, and if you think your tax rate could be higher in any of these next 3 situations, then you may consider a Roth conversion. It may make sense for you. So what are those 3 situations? Compare your tax rate today to your tax rate in retirement. And if your tax rate in retirement could be higher than it is today, then it would make sense for you to consider a Roth conversion. Now, if you're like, Debbie, I'm already in retirement, well, then just push it out maybe 10 years. Think about when you start taking those RMDs and Social Security kicks in. And compare then your tax rate today to maybe then 5 or 10 years from now when you're a little deeper in retirement and those RMDs are kicking in and Social Security is kicking in. But basically compare your tax rate today to retirement, or if you're already in retirement, 10 or 15 years into retirement when that income is a little higher. And again, if that future tax rate is going to be higher, or you think it's going to be higher, you should probably consider a Roth conversion. Number 2, consider today's tax rate versus your tax rate if you're married filing joint and then one of you passes and the surviving partner or spouse is filing single. So compare today's tax rate, if you're a couple, to what it would look like if one of you passed and the surviving partner or spouse is filing single. And in many instances, most of that income is still going to be there, but now you've got a survivor who's filing single, which basically cuts most of those tax brackets in half and pushes the survivor into a higher tax bracket. The third ghost of Christmas future, right, the third scenario to think about is comparing today's tax rates to your heirs' tax rates, to your beneficiaries' tax rates. And why is that important? If we have a large IRA, and I'm defining that as an IRA about $1.5 million and above, if you have a large IRA and you want to leave that IRA to your beneficiaries, a Roth conversion could make sense because when your beneficiaries inherit that IRA, in many instances, they will need to draw it down over 10 years, which will push them likely into a higher tax bracket or paying a higher tax rate. And if that's the case, you may consider doing a Roth conversion now so that when they inherit a Roth IRA, they will not have RMDs and there will not be any income tax on it. And they will draw out that money within that 10-year period, but they will not have to pay income taxes on it. So what you want to think about then is not necessarily paying taxes at the lowest rate today, right? You don't necessarily want to go and brag, hey, I'm at the 10% tax bracket. Why? Why are you at 10%? You're wasting an opportunity there to do Roth conversions or distribution planning and pulling some of that income forward, right? Those are potentially wasted opportunities. You want to ideally pay at a tax rate that is more even throughout your lifetime. Not 10 or 12% now, but then down the road you're paying at 24 or 35%. If that could be the case because of the widow's penalty or because of your financial situation improving or tax rates going up, whatever the reason, if that tax rate is going to be potentially higher down the road at 24, 35, 37, 39.6%, right? Then you want to pull that income forward and pay some of those taxes at that 10 or 12% number. So that is what this chart is about, is thinking about our current rate versus our future rate. And if we think our current rate is less than our future rate, then let's think about bringing some of that income forward, and let's think about some of this planning. So now let's look at the different tax bracket buckets. And again, we talked about this a little bit, but picture's worth 1,000 words. So if you're in these lower tax brackets, let's consider pulling income forward. Let's consider our Roth conversions. If you are in the higher tax brackets, let's think about our situation going forward. Let's consider the factors that we just talked about, and a Roth conversion could make sense. I'll give you another example. My husband and I are in the highest tax bracket. The rule of thumb would tell you, don't do a Roth conversion. You're in the highest tax bracket. But we had an account with some technology stocks that went down quite a bit last year. We did a Roth conversion on that account. By the way, that account is up significantly because we did a Roth conversion when that account was down. So that's the idea here, is being nimble, being flexible, understanding your situation, working with your advisor so that, I say, make lemonade out of lemons, right? So that account was down. I was not happy about it, but it created a Roth conversion opportunity. I made lemonade out of the lemons. So again, then what we're thinking about is your wealth over a lifetime. We're trying to minimize lifetime taxes and maximize lifetime wealth. We're trying to level out those taxes, essentially. Okay, moving on then, and we're going to come back to Roth IRAs, but moving on. Third item here is asset location is critical. Asset location, not allocation, not asset allocation. We all know about asset allocation, right? Oh, I'm 90% this and 10% that, 80-20. I'm talking about asset location. And I will tell you, asset location is the unsung hero of tax planning. Like I said before, I run these numbers all day. I run projections all day going out 10, 20, 30 years. And proper asset location can make you hundreds of thousands and maybe even millions of dollars over several decades. Do not underestimate the power of paying attention to this. So what is asset location? Asset location, perhaps, is putting those more aggressive equities inside that Roth IRA, because that Roth IRA is going to grow hopefully for decades, and when you pull that money out, it comes out tax-free. So maybe that is where your more aggressive holdings should be. Those are the types of moves. They do not sound powerful, but again, that compounding over decades can create a lot of wealth and a lot of opportunity. Our fourth strategy, right, of the 9, we're on 4 now, is tax loss harvesting and gain harvesting, tax loss trading and gain harvesting. And the reminder here is that tax loss trading and gain harvesting is a year-round sport. This is not something we wait until December for. In fact, the market often rallies in December, right? We have that Santa Claus rally. We want to do tax loss trading throughout the year when those opportunities present themselves. And again, you don't necessarily need to look at the index. You might have a certain account that is down because you have even just a specific holding. It could just be one holding or one account. And it's not necessarily December. It could be happening in February. It could be happening in May. So last year we were doing tax loss trading in May. The market hit its first bottom in June. We were doing tax loss trading through that. Do not let the calendar dictate your tax planning. Tax planning is year-round, 12 months a year. It is not a December activity, and this is a great example of that. Item 5, your benefits booklets. For those of you who work at some of those larger firms that have those benefit booklets, they are chock full of tax planning opportunities. And it might be hard to understand them. Don't expect your HR department or your benefits department to be explaining those to you. We have clients that work on Wall Street, and they literally just email the benefit booklets to us because they have no idea what's in those booklets, and they work on Wall Street. And so if any of you have those benefit booklets, you should bring them or send them to your financial advisor because they are filled with opportunities. Roth 401ks, after-tax accounts, student loan payoff, stock purchase plans, deferred comp, lots in there, and lots that needs to be coordinated to determine what makes the most sense for you. So please do not ignore what could be in those booklets. My daughter used to work at Prudential, and as part of working at Prudential, they pay off $5,000 of your student loans tax-free. What a huge opportunity. And by the way, she didn't know about it. The only way we found out about it is I read through her booklet. Backdoor Roth conversions. Now, this is one of those things like I mentioned before. This is not one of those huge wins like, oh yeah, this is a home run. This is one of those little wins that we do year in and year out for 10, 20, 30 years. And if you do this year in and year out, $15,000 a year over 20 years, that could be anywhere from $500,000 to maybe $1 million when you factor in compounding and growth. And that could potentially come from the fact that you just did $15,000 a year for 20 years or 30 years. These little decisions, these good decisions, add up for you. And that's the value also, by the way, of a great financial advisor, because you're getting this advice along the way and able to make these great decisions every day, every year, so that when it's time for you to retire or even well into retirement, we have made these good decisions and we have amassed this wealth. Health savings account is another one, a small win. It is $7,750. You need a high deductible medical plan to qualify. But if you do, you put this money in and you take it out at age 55 or 65. You take it out at age 65 and you take it out for medical expenses and it's tax-free. That's huge. So if you have this available to you, consider it, talk to your advisor. This can really add up. And who thinks that they're not going to need assistance paying for medical expenses once they retire? Annuities have become a thing again. And so years ago, annuities made a lot of sense. Then they sort of fell out of favor a little bit because interest rates were a little bit lower, the market was doing well, and now annuities are back, right? So what's old is new. When you've got a volatile market and now interest rates are higher, the annuities can be a powerful piece of the portfolio. And 9. So this is our 9th way to diffuse the pre-retiree tax bomb. We must consider estate planning, trusts, and legacy planning. So you're going to hear me talk about this a few times tonight. This is so important for us. So as a reminder, the current lifetime exemption is $12.9 million, basically close to $26 million if you're a couple. That's a lot of money, right? And that's courtesy of the TCJA from 2017. But if they allow the TCJA to sunset at the end of 2025, this lifetime exclusion could be cut in half. It could be cut in half. And that could affect a lot more people now. And that's where I want to step back and take an opportunity to discuss then also your wealth and where you are in life. A lot of folks don't realize the value of the things that they have. It could be the family farm. It could be land and acreage. It could be that IRA that you have that you never really thought about so much, or that 401k because you've just been putting money away and living within your means and not thinking about it so much. It could be that small business, right? It could be a couple things. But a lot of times people will say, Debbie, I don't feel wealthy. You're talking about all this stuff, but I don't feel that. I understand that, because the way you got to where you are is what I say is that you were a great saver and a lousy spender, right? A great saver and a lousy spender. The problem is that living within your means and living humbly helped you to accumulate this wealth, this asset, or these assets, whatever they are, the family farm, the land, the small business, the IRA, maybe other accounts, maybe it's all in CDs. And I know that you might not feel like, oh, Debbie, I don't feel like that's a lot of wealth. And I understand that. But Washington does not necessarily view it that way. Washington needs to raise revenue. And to them, when they see a $2 million IRA, or they see a business or farm or land or portfolio that is worth several $1 million, they see that as an opportunity. And so we've got to be smart about our wealth. We need to be good stewards over what we have and what we've worked so hard for and what we've sacrificed for. And one of the things then is the estate planning. We need to be vigilant. These laws could change within the next couple of years. You should be sitting down now with your financial advisor and talking about strategies to implement now. There are no clawbacks. So if they change the estate planning laws in a couple of years, they cannot go back to you now and say, hey, you did all this gifting, all these transfers, set up all these trusts, and we changed the law, so we're not going to let you do that, even though you did it in 2023. They're not allowed to do that. We already know that. There are no clawbacks. So if this is the type of thing that you were thinking about, there's a lot of good reasons to be doing it sooner rather than later. Talk to your financial advisor about it. And so just a reminder then of the different tax planning opportunities that we talked about. And so not necessarily in any particular order, but more as a review, right, is contributing to those 401ks, getting the company match. Don't forget those Roths, the health savings accounts, building those Roth balances, those conversions, and the annuities. And so this is a little bit of a summary, but lots of options here. And just like you're putting together a puzzle, this is a great opportunity then to be sitting with your advisor and saying, okay, Debbie talked about all these different things. Which are the ones that are available to me? Which are the ones that make the most sense to me? Which are the ones that are in my benefits booklet that I should be doing, right? This is what we should be talking about. Okay, for those folks who are closer to retirement or in retirement, we're going to talk now about the things that we're up against. The 5 tax gotchas. And these are the 5 areas that we're up against. Some of them we covered a little bit already tonight. We're going to go into some depth a little bit more because this is the headwinds that are facing us. These are the things that we need to be prepared for. Let's go through them one by one. So we talked a little bit about these large IRAs, these large 401ks. When somebody comes to my office and proudly shows me their $2 or $3 million large 401k balance or large IRA balance, I cringe. I tell them it's kryptonite, okay? They're like, Debbie, I spent my entire life building this balance. And I said, yes, I know that, because nobody told you how you were going to get taxed on this in retirement. Nobody explained to you that the government changed the laws on you, and that you do not want to be walking around with this huge IRA or 401k balance. And so we're going to have to work together on this to minimize the taxes. These large IRAs, these large RMDs, it is like the Roach Motel, if you remember that ad when you were a kid. I know I'm dating myself, right? Is once you check in, you can't check out. Remember that ad? That is like these large traditional IRAs. We need to be careful with them. They're a little bit like an albatross around our neck, and so we've got to be savvy. We've got to balance them out with those other types of accounts, the Roth accounts, the taxable accounts. We've got to be smart with this because there are no U-turns, or very difficult to make those U-turns, particularly once those RMDs start. So we want to do this planning sooner rather than later. as we talked about, we have got to be careful of rising taxes and the expiration of the TCJA. Does anybody out there, and I know there's a lot of you out there, does anybody out there think taxes are going down for us? Probably not. Most of you probably think that there's a good chance that taxes are going up, and we need to be vigilant. And let's just think about this for a second. Remember that if the TCJA expires, that highest tax bracket goes from 37 to 39.6%. And let's take another example. If, let's say, you're in the 24% tax bracket making $300,000 a year, that could push you into the 33% tax bracket, going from 24 to 33%. Those are the types of things that can happen when the TCJA expires, or if they start tinkering around with those with that tax code. The one thing we have not talked too much about is that widow's penalty. And this is very upsetting to me. So I did refer to it earlier. This is the idea when you're married filing joint, and then one of you passes, usually it's the man, and the woman is the survivor, she's the widow. And what happens with the tax code is you go from married filing joint to filing single. And those tax brackets are essentially cut in half. What does that mean then for that surviving spouse or partner? Let's take an example. At $250,000, you're in the 24% tax bracket if you're married filing joint. If you go to filing single, because now you are the widow, you go up to the 35% tax bracket. And by the way, that's today's numbers. That's not even factoring in any tax increases down the road. The other thing I want to mention is if you become newly widowed, and this is if any of you have a friend out there or a neighbor, the advice that is given to them is don't do anything. Don't do anything for 6 months. That is bad advice. Now, I know that we don't want to jump into anything too rash. That I agree with. But you need to have a trusted advisor immediately, because there are things baked into that tax code that have extreme time sensitivity. And if you wait that 6 months, you might miss certain deadlines and certain tax planning opportunities that could be very expensive. So again, if there is somebody that is newly widowed, I know that is a difficult time, but we need to get a trusted advisor on the scene to be coaching that widow for certain things that must be done sooner rather than later. The Secure Act. So we talked a little bit about those large IRA balances. And if you have that large IRA balance, as of 2019, under the Secure Act, when you try to leave that balance to your children, they must draw down that balance to zero within 10 years. They will probably be drawing down that balance while they're in the higher tax brackets and they're working peak earning years. What that could mean is that they are drawing down that IRA balance, and maybe anywhere from 40 to 50% of that IRA could go to pay taxes. And people who've worked their entire life thinking that they're going to be able to leave their IRA or their 401k to their children find this very surprising and very disappointing. Because the problem is that this law was passed just a few years ago. This was not on the books 10 years, 20 years ago, when we started all that saving. And with that idea that we were going to be able to leave this to our children in a tax-efficient way. And now all of a sudden, the government has pulled the rug out from under us. And as of 2019, those laws are different for your beneficiaries. And so what does that mean for us? For most beneficiaries, they will have to take it out within 10 years. But if we do Roth conversions, then we can leave them a Roth IRA. They will still need to draw it down within 10 years, but they will not have to pay any income taxes on it because you paid the taxes on it now. So it's essentially paying the taxes on that inheritance for your children. And for many folks, that is a very attractive opportunity, a very attractive strategy for them. And the fifth tax gotcha is the estate planning, which we touched upon before. And there's two things we really need to be thinking about here. One of them is that lifetime exclusion being tinkered with, being decreased, and we've got to be vigilant and thinking about that. And the second is Washington trying to take away or limit some of the most popular estate planning strategies that we want to use. So there's two different things we need to worry about. One of them is the dollar amount that we can give away tax-free, but the other one is how we're giving it away. And there's certain strategies that are more palatable than others, and they're trying to limit that. So the idea here then is if you're in this danger zone, if you are somebody that could be affected by the decrease of that lifetime exclusion, if you were going to give some money away anyway and do some of these transfers anyway, I would encourage you to be speaking to your advisor now and putting together a strategy with your estate planning attorney now, while we still have some of the opportunities that are available to us. So we have a couple minutes left. I want to hop into a quick case study. So this is a real client. Whenever I do case studies, I believe in using real client numbers so everybody knows, there's a lot of credibility here. I don't have to game the numbers. The numbers tell the story. Now, I know that this client has a little bit more money, $2.7 million in that traditional IRA, the taxable balance of $900, the Roth IRA of $700. So I know that might be a little bit higher than some of you, might be a little bit lower, might be a little higher. Here's what I will tell you. No matter what your situation is, these numbers can be powerful. These numbers can be powerful, particularly if we're talking over years and decades of implementing these strategies and watching them go to work. So if you're a lot more than this, then you're going to benefit more greatly. If your accounts are less than this, the numbers are still very powerful. And so here's our couple, and he is 9 years older than her. So we see the widow's penalty being a really profound issue, particularly when there is an age difference between the spouses, right? You see an older husband and a younger wife, which is very typical. That means that she's going to suffer from that widow's penalty for an even longer period of time. And therefore, we should be doing the tax planning that much earlier and that much more aggressively. So here is the spreadsheet with some of the numbers. And what this tells us then is, going here to bottom line it, is if we do even a simple strategy of Roth conversions up to 24% for 4 years, right? This is something that's like very basic. We're not even getting cute here. Sometimes we'll see strategies that are over, 8 years, 10 years, do this, do that. This is just something very simple, is let's go to the 24% tax bracket and look at what happens to this couple. Total tax savings of $1.3 million. RMDs reduced by over $700,000. The ending traditional IRA balance, which remember, we don't like traditional IRAs, that is decreased dramatically. Look at our Roth IRA, right? That is almost 30% higher, and our ending asset value is higher. If you look at this, every single data point is a win. Every single data point, they're better off. This is the power of some of this tax planning. So let's review. 8 steps to increasing wealth. First, tax planning is critical to building wealth. And I hope over this last hour or so, you're seeing all the different tools that can be in the toolkit and the different ways it could apply to you and your family. Your tax return matters, so make sure you have that. Make sure you share it with your financial advisor, because you need the tax return as the starting point. Know if you are at risk with the sunsetting of TCJA. Know if you are at risk with tax rates going up down the road, income tax rates, and also estate taxes and changes. And if you have some vulnerabilities, or if you don't know, talk to your advisor and start planning through that. Remember that large traditional IRA accounts can be burdensome, can be very expensive, and can create a lot of taxes for you, for your surviving spouse, and for your children. So let's plan around that, right? That's that whole ghost of Christmas future, right? Let's figure out what the situation is going to look like. And if we have that large traditional IRA, and the way I define that is $1.5 million or $2 million plus. Now, it could still apply to you if you're under $1.5 million. Let's say you're younger and your balance is $1 million. Well, we should be talking, right? You should be talking to your financial advisor, because we need to contain that. We need to figure out how that works within your plan, and be careful about that amount growing too much at the exclusion of other types of accounts. So it's not a hard, fast rule like less than $1.5 million and it doesn't matter, right? But around $1.5 million to $2 million, you definitely should be talking to your financial advisor. And less than $1.5 million, it's on a case-by-case basis. It's worth it to have that conversation. Know the benefits then of those Roth conversion opportunities, whether you're in the 10% tax bracket, the lowest, or whether you're in the highest or somewhere in between. Be aware of all the different tax planning opportunities: asset location, tax bracket management, tax loss trading, what's in those benefit booklets, right? So think about all those things. Do not forget about that widow's penalty. Very upsetting and very expensive. Do not forget about what this tax code does to the surviving partner. And then, again, back to that Secure Act, those large IRAs, and what it does to those beneficiaries and the additional taxes it creates. And let's figure out some distribution planning, some tax planning around that. This is my last slide, and I end most of my presentations with this slide. Those of you who were psychology majors in college may remember that Maslow hierarchy, right? Those psychological needs and wants. At the very bottom of this pyramid are the basic things, right? It's, placing a trade, hiring a money manager, right? Those are the basic things. As we move up this value pyramid, getting to the top, this is where your financial advisor wants to be. This is where tax planning, working together on your journey, this is where you will be with your financial advisor, helping you to take care of loved ones, helping you to feel more in control, helping you to worry less, helping you to live life's purpose, to make a difference in your community, to make a difference with your family, to make a difference in your church, right? And also having some peace of mind and working towards that. This is what tax planning can help you and your financial advisor do for you, working together. And so with that, then, thank you for tonight, and stay safe. And back to you, Dan.
Thank you. Before you go, hang on. We have an offer for you. We also have some resources we want you to be mindful of. And thank you, Debbie. Great content and an amazing message. Before we close, I want to address the final question you're probably thinking. What about my situation, right? How can I take what I learned here tonight and apply it to my unique financial picture? At the beginning of this webinar, I told you one of our goals is to provide you with the resources you need to start developing your financial strategy. The best resource we have at Thrivent are our highly trained and skilled financial professionals. So as a thank you for being here tonight, we'd like to offer you a customized strategy session with one of our financial professionals. In your session, 3 things will happen. You and your financial professional will get to know you, your values, and your financial picture, and prioritize the goals most important to you. Based on that discussion, you'll walk out with 1 or more action steps you can use to help toward reaching your goals and strengthening your overall financial picture. If you'd like help implementing the action steps or strategies recommended, you and your financial professional can talk about what it looks like to work together. These strategy sessions are typically 30 to 60 minutes long, and unless we are able to meet in person, the sessions will be conducted virtually, typically via Zoom, just like we're on right now. The way to get your session is to tell us through the poll. Yeah, you guessed it. It's probably up on your screen right now. That's popped up on your screen right now. If you have an iPhone, it's right there in front of you. If you're on your computer, you may have to find it. You may be at a party right now near your advisor where you could just talk to them right there. But if you identify it right here, we'll connect you right away, get you connected with your advisor through this strategy session. So go ahead right there. You see the poll. Also, I was bragging about this great place, this meaningful place to work, Thrivent Financial. Right there, you can, if you know someone or if you are interested in the career opportunity, you can identify it right there on the poll as well. As you're taking that poll and looking through that, I also want to remind you that we'll be sending you a follow-up email with some additional resources. We also have some amazing events here at Thrivent coming up that we want you to be mindful of. We have financial education, but we also have some concerts and some lifestyle webinars as well. So we want to keep you up to date on all the great things that we're doing here at Thrivent that would add value to your life. Also, there'll be resources and other things in that email. So be on the lookout for that follow-up email. Finally, we are thrilled that you joined us tonight. Remember, there is no reason to go on your financial journey alone. It is our privilege to help you find the clarity and confidence that comes with having a solid financial strategy in place. So God bless you. We thank you. Fill out that poll so we can serve you here in the future. Appreciate you being with us.
Win of information. That was a lot of information, I'm sure. That was a mental massage for me. I'm in this world, so I speak the language constantly, but I know that was a lot of information for you all at once. But let's do a little bit of debrief because there was some great information that was shared. There is a few things that I want to highlight. Are there any questions that's resting on your mind? Was there one or two things that popped out where you have a question on before I jump into my list? Go ahead, Pastor. Oh, that's a great question. Estate planning is important, and you say what age? If you have life, estate planning is important for you, because without it, that creates a problem for other people, right? And so estate planning is where you are putting together final documents. So there's a legal proceeding involved, but there's also a financial proceeding involved where you're naming beneficiaries on financial accounts and that those assets are being categorized and housed in the right place, such as a trust. When your assets are substantial, it may make sense to move it to what is called an irrevocable trust, because at that point, that estate planning tax that she was talking about, which is actually 40%. Once you get past that $12 million limit, and sometimes we're just brushing it off our shoulders saying, 12 million, that's not me. But there are folks in our congregation that own businesses, that owns structures, and you can quickly get to an accumulation past that. So it is important to make sure you're putting together final documents, whether it's a will, whether it's a trust. If it's just a property, you can look at doing what is a quitclaim deed to name specific individuals that will be beneficiaries on that, to determine whether a trust should own your primary residence. There are several things that you need to look at to figure out whether that's beneficial. Or simply a thing as putting a POD on a savings account, a pass on death on a savings account. Because once you pass, their beneficiary does not have access to your bank account. They have to show up with a death certificate. They have to say that they are the executor of the estate or a letter of administration. There's so many things that they would have to do just to get access to that bank account. So just simply naming someone that is a TOD, transfer on death, or a pass on death beneficiary on your savings account is a first simple step that you need to do for estate planning. All right? And so making sure that will is in place when there are hard assets that needs to be passed. If you are married, yes, it's going to go to your spouse, but there are other personal property, that you can't just put a name on, right? And so will is important, but the will has to go through probate. right? Your will still has to go through probate, and that now becomes public knowledge. So trust sometimes is a more private way of getting it done. Sure, it costs a lot of money, but it costs way less than probate most of the times. Okay, so there are estate attorneys that I work with. You're looking for a referral, I can point you in the right direction. I believe there is someone that is from our church, or maybe I'm thinking criminal is what he does. Nonetheless, there are several estate attorneys that we can seek out and verify if they are the right suit for what you're looking for. So that's a great question. Any other questions that came away or just piqued an interest that you want to point out? There were several topics that Debbie touched on, and like I said, for me this is thrilling. I know, but just based on your expression, I can tell that it's a different language, But for one, she talked about the Roth, which we touched on initially before we went into the live session. The Roth is a key tool to have in your financial arsenal because that's going to give you more diversification. It's going to give you more control over what happens to your assets later on. And does anybody remember the 3 things that we do to determine whether a Roth is something you take advantage of? You first look at what your tax bracket is now, and you try to determine, is it going to be higher later? And for most people, that's a yes. If you are in any type of earning capacity, you're expecting to get raises. If you own a business, you're expecting business growth. That may be yes, or just the mere fact that the sunsetting of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, or what Congress may do later on. So that may be a yes. And the second one is if you are married, and you could possibly be in a higher tax bracket if you lose your spouse. That's a significant one that we don't want to brush over. If you're married, you're getting a dual standard deduction. You're getting to deduct about $25,000 off the top of your income. That's if you're doing standard. You could be itemizing, but just say standard, right? So you're getting to deduct more off the top. As a single person, that's cut in half. So your standard deduction is cut in half, and you're also now in potentially a higher tax bracket because the income is still there. So in retirement, you're being penalized twice for losing your spouse, but also now for being a higher tax bracket. That's really sad, And the government does stuff like that because we can't fight it. They make the decision, And so it looks good to accumulate things in 401ks, but how we do it is important because you have access to doing a Roth inside your 401k. You could get a Roth contribution, and with the recent Secure Act 2.0, you can actually get a match on your Roth contribution as well. So there are different ways to go about saving, and where we save is important as well. So those were the key ones. HSA, a quick call out to those. If you have a healthcare plan that's on, the Affordable Care Act on the marketplace, if it's a high deductible plan, you can set up an HSA, right? And we always can take advantage of using it directly to pay for healthcare expenses. So an HSA, you make the contribution into it with pre-tax dollars, right? So you're getting a tax deduction for it, and then the funds are growing in there, however you decide, and then you're taking all of that to pay for healthcare expense. So at no point are you being taxed on it. All of that growth, all of that contribution is going towards healthcare. And we know we're all going to utilize healthcare, whether it's to pay for healthcare premiums or for your actual care. So HSAs are a very good tool if you have a high deductible plan. That's the first step to qualify for it. Another quick highlight with IRAs and large balances, at age 73, regardless of whether we want to take funds out of these accounts, we have to. If we don't, we're taxed 25% of what we should have taken out. So that's one of the key issues with traditional IRAs, 401ks, that accumulation over time. Even if you say, I don't need this money, the IRA say, hey, you've saved in here long enough, it's time for you to take some out so I can tax you on it. And when you die and leave it for your beneficiaries, they're going to tax your beneficiaries at their tax bracket. And if your son or daughter is a doctor and is doing well and is in a really high tax bracket, guess what? They're taking it out and being penalized at that higher tax bracket. So it's important to start thinking about Roth conversion Not everything that we've accumulated over our lifetime and because we've stopped working doesn't mean that we should just stop paying attention to things. We want to make sure that we are strategizing each year to make sure, okay, if something has changed, how can I take advantage of that tax bracket? Okay? So a lot of information. Some of it is applicable to your individual situation, some's not. So we want to sift through that. So of course, if you have any questions, you know where I am, you know where I worship, so connect with me. And so I'm here with the resources. This is one of several financial sessions that we'll be doing. Again, you can see it's a whirlwind of information, so we'll sift through it little by little. There's some other topics that we'll do, but if there's something that you're thinking about that you need specific information on, let me know. I'll be able to gather some information and provide that to you. Lastly, you have an interest form, and so if you want to connect with me personally, again, this is a lot of information. If there's specific questions that you have that you don't feel comfortable sharing with everyone, fill out the interest form, and then we can sit down and talk one-on-one. Okay? Wonderful. Any questions, any thought at all before we wrap up? I know you're hungry, and there is some food back there that we have to devour. So anything before we wrap up? All right. Well, thank you for having me this evening. Thank you for your listening ear, for your intention to seek after information. I think we need to be that type of people that, we're not just going to take what's given to us, but we're going to search for information. And by God, we're going to continue to do just that. Pastor, any final words from you? Oh, it's a blessing. Agreed. All right, well, let's do a blessing over the catered food. We have Olive Garden in the back. We have some ziti, some cheesecake, some lasagnas, Parmesan chicken, salad. Let's stand for a blessing. Father, Lord, we thank you for the fellowship that we're about to have. We pray your blessing over the food. We thank you for the financial knowledge that we received this evening, and may that help us to make educated decisions about our walk and our ability to be good stewards over what you have given us and what you've put us in charge of. We thank you for all that you've done and what you'll do for us. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, you're dismissed. Head on over to the fellowship hall, but if you have questions, you can see me.
I really like the fact that we can meet people from all over the world.
That's what we've already planned. Everyone here wants to come back again. It's just, we've had the time of our lives here. It's been great.